Atari made its way onto many Atari consoles back in the day, but where are Ataris now? We asked a few people what happened to their old video game systems, and here's what they told us.
Well, I have no idea. The first the Atari 2600 I have now is probably at the bottom of a landfill somewhere.
I could not tell you because I sold it at a garage sale. It's probably at the dump.
Might be in a landfill.
Unfortunately, I don't have my first console ever. It's before eBay was around, so I'm guessing someone picked it up in Pennsylvania someplace and is using it as toilet paper.
My first console, like the Atari 2600 game console, I actually have that on a shelf in my office, along with every game I ever did in shrink-wrap form.
My first console, the Atari 2600, is sitting on my living room shelf.
My first console is on a shelf in my office.
Well, my first console, now that went in a garage sale sometime during the Reagan administration.
I have the first Atari 2600 that came off the assembly line. And they're in my game room.
I still have the first console, and I probably have about 25 other consoles to add with that first console. So it's collecting dust, right? No, I use my console.
Okay, I may still have my Atari, but unfortunately, I have no idea what happened to the crazy cool paddles that came with the game at number 5. Back in the day, Kaboom was the ultimate reflex game. You had a trio of water buckets, and you had to slide them from left to right in order to catch a battery of bombs released by who else? The Mad Bomber. That was no small task, but in the end, it was still definitely the bomb.
Kaboom! Oh, talk about a real manic game. That's, you know, you got the little bomber dropping bombs down on you. Got to catch them in your water bucket.
Really fun game. Fundamental, basic, simple mechanic that just gets more and more intense.
And, you know, after the 9th level or so, the pace gets very, very, very frenetic.
It's a game where people often describe that they go into the zone, and if you don't find the zone, you can't win the game.
Kaboom makes your eyes water. You definitely have to focus in on your buckets. I would suggest staring in the center of the screen and doing a delay reaction as to how the bombs are dropped. Because if you don't follow this, you will die quickly.
More than just the game at number 5, Kaboom was also a sound heard early and often in the very first Atari 2600 game ever made. And to own a 2600 was to own that very game because combat came packaged with each and every Atari sold. When it came to starter kits, there simply was nothing that could touch this two-player game of one-on-one combat with tanks, planes, and jet fighters. The original fighter blows up the 4-spot.
Probably one of my first experiences playing a video game at home was Combat Tanks on the Atari. And the only reason I remember that is because I used to love G.I. Joes, and the fact that I actually got to shoot things out of the tanks was a big thing for me.
It's a wonderful way for two people to go head-to-head. It's a dueling battle. It's planes against planes, tanks against tanks. Two people enter, one person exits.
One of the neat little tricks I used to do back in the old days was to secretly switch the difficulty switch on them, you know, and make it more difficult to make their tank or plane move slower and see how long it took them to notice.
There's no way we could overlook combat for the countdown, but there were a few other worthy titles that just missed the top 10. We'll take a look at some of those when we come back, plus we'll keep counting them down till we get to number 1. Will the river raid the top spot, or will a pitfall swallow it up? Stick around and find out when Filter returns. Back to Filter. I'm Diane Mizoda, and we're back at the Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas, where we're counting down the best classic console games of all time. With 7 down and 3 up, let's catch up before we wrap up with a quick recap. Mega Mania slides into the 10th spot. Enduro crosses the finish line in 9th place. Your HERO finishes in 8th. Adventure unlocks a 7th place finish. The chicken crossed the road so that Freeway could grab the 6th spot. Kabooyah! Kaboom is the bomb at number 5. And it may have been a freebie, but Combat has more than enough fight to wind up in 4th. Speaking of fights, here's one that takes place above ground. River Raid put you in the pilot seat of a B-1 Strato-Wing assault jet and sent you into the heat of combat over the hazardous river of no return. Perhaps it wasn't the most original game in the world, but it was a hell of a good time. Plus, it was developed by a woman, so hell yeah. The Atari Air Shooter comes in 3rd.
River Raid is the granddaddy of all like shooter games.
River Raid is your raid you're pulling all the way down the river, where you're climbing up this snaking river and you are facing, you know, flak and various challenges. Things are jumping up to get you, and you've got to be shooting or bombing things as you're moving along.
With the possibility of running out of fuel. So you have to run the fuel tanks over to gain your fuel to continue.
You know, pretty basic concept, but there was just enough variety in it to keep it interesting.
It was kind of a simple game, blowing up bridges with your plane.
River Raid notched itself a spot in the countdown, but the games you're about to see weren't as lucky. Here's a look at a few titles that got filtered out.
Flag capture. You have a field of squares, one of which has a flag. Okay? The goal is to be the first one to get to the flag. But this was something where you're competing with another person, but the goal is not just to get them, the goal is to use your environment and read the signals and do all that. There was more to it.
I would add Frostbite to that list. Frostbite is another game that kept you on your toes, where you jumped across floating icebergs, avoiding crabs and collecting fish to gain your points. Your object was to build an igloo and then hide in the igloo from the attacking bear.
Now that we've paid our respects to a few veterans that got overlooked, let's pay some props to the best-looking vet on the block. Your two favorite classic console games are Yars' Revenge and Pitfall, and that's no surprise. Yars' Revenge was a super original shooter which had Atari fans jamming that little red fire button for days on end, while Pitfall kept you going and going until you finally reached the end. It's considered to be the first real platforming game ever. But only one of these games can be best classic console game ever. And you know what that means. It's time to sit down and strap in as Shooter takes on Swinger in another filter face-off.
Yars' Revenge was a space action game with a whole science fiction story upon which it was predicated that I heard the programmer wrote himself, actually.
You know, I would probably pick Yars' Revenge because I'm really into shooting games, and Yars' Revenge has got a lot more action than Pitfall does.
I would go with Yars' Revenge because Pitfall has a definite ending, and if you're really good, you can play Yars' Revenge forever. I mean, if that's your thing.
Oh man, I've got to go with Pitfall on that one. Slightly better crafted, more innovative graphics at the time, you know, a lot more things on the screen. It wasn't just black and a few things on the screen you're shooting at.
For me personally, I like Pitfall. I like the role-playing games better than the action shooters, so I'd choose Pitfall.
I would say it was a pretty good adventure game. You have to gather 32 treasures and to accumulate 114,000 points in a 20-minute time frame.
I would pick Pitfall in a face-off because Pitfall Harry is just this really cool, enduring console character. Very simple guy. The whole like sound effect of people swinging, where you go la, la, la. La, la, la.
It took about 10 minutes to design the game of Pitfall on a piece of paper. It then took 1,000 hours sitting at a computer to bring it to life.
To pull polls are closed, your votes are counted, and your choice for the best classic console game of all time is Pitfall! Harry hangs his hat on the top spot. Well, that wraps up this episode of Filter. Remember, the opinions expressed on this show are yours, not mine. So make your vote count on future episodes by logging on to the Filter show page at g4tv.com/filter. Until then, I'm Diane Mizota, and I'll see you next time.